my gosh. Welcome back to another episode of Relative Pitch Season 4. Woo, 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 woo. Wow, it has been too long since you all have seen our faces. It has. It's been like, what, May? Oh, gosh, and it's August. I mean, all good reasons, though, right? Everyone needs a break. So, and not that any of us really took a break, right? Between then and now. But we'll get into that later. But it's so good to be back and to be in conversation again, a public conversation. I'm really excited for this season. We have some amazing guests who are already lined up to come and chat with you all. Make sure you check out the website, know who's coming on, what to expect. Go back and check out past episodes. But yeah, Anthony and Michael, wow. How are we feeling? Season 4.
Has it been 4 years? It hasn't been 4 years.
I mean,
Because, we do this every August. Like, we start in August, and this is season 4.
yeah.
That means this is the fourth act. We do academic years here.
Oh, of course.
Right. This is our 4th academic year. This is honestly, for anybody that started listening when they were like a freshman in college, they're seniors. They're literally about to be done with their entire undergraduate career right now.
That's crazy.
Stop.
That is real crazy.
We're seniors, guys. It's our senior year.
First of all, time is a social construct. That's number one. Because I don't know, in my head, I just cannot fathom 4 academic years that we've been doing this. And every year has been bigger and better. And, just we really found out what relative pitch is. I think we all had a concept of what it was going to be first season, but to see the vision back then, to see the vision now, it's just like, OMG. And let's just talk about it. Let's let the cat out the bag. This year, we're literally going to be presenting at one of the largest international conferences in the entire world. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is.
So
it's like the first conference we all went to together.
Yes. And which is going to be so nostalgic. Well, for anybody that is living on a rock, we are presenting at the Midwest Band and Orchestra Clinic this December in Chicago, Illinois. That was our first trip. I literally remember us 3 being sophomores in college. I was just like, I've heard about this conference. It's in Chicago. Let's go. And we was like, all right, let's book the flight. We stayed at the Chicago South Loop Hotel.
Girl, we did not do our research.
We didn't do our research, but we was in the room. We were in the room, and that's all that matters. Because we got our flight, and honestly, that kind of flight was a little scary. We went on American. For any of you girls that are American,
we prayed. We did give a good pray down.
Actually, I think American was fine. It was United is the one that I think scared us the most.
That's right.
Yeah. But I just remember being in those rooms for the first time of Midwest. Do y'all remember y'all first time, either going to a conference or hearing one of the best ensembles in the world perform? Do y'all remember that? Because I remember my experience.
I think that first year, the 2 most memorable things was hearing Tom Hooten present on something and then hearing the Chicago Brass.
Yes. Yeah, I was going to say going to hear Chicago Brass was definitely one of the peak things I remember from our first time, for sure. I think I was a little overwhelmed. Those conferences, and especially Midwest, is huge. There's so many people there. There's so many things to do. So I was like, how do you pick? Well, what do you do? Where do I go? And then having y'all who I didn't really know too much about the band world or, in terms of at large and the orchestra world, it was nice having you to kind of guide me along to tell me, oh, let's go here. And now I feel confident. I can I know where to go. It's good. So.
Yes. I remember the session that I remember the most from my first year was definitely a session that was on Karel Husa because I think that was the year he had passed. And so they were doing this kind of all-star group. Like Mallory Thompson was there, Frankie Battisti was there.
I remember this panel.
Me too.
Jean Corporon was on the panel, like all of these people that, in undergrad, like I knew all these names. I'm like, they're like band royalty. And to kind of see them all on a panel talking about Karel Husa, which at the time I didn't really know Karel Husa at that time. Like, I didn't know Music for Prague. I didn't know Smetana Fanfare. I just was like, I just need to be in this room. And for anybody that is like a first time going to Midwest, or honestly, first time going to a conference, just go into rooms, like just go. And I ended up learning way much about Karel Husa and his music. I mean, one of my favorite pieces is Music for Prague now. And hearing those like first count stories, you know how like, well, me and Karel, we did this and he liked this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you know how for me, I love when my like grandmother would tell stories and I just kind of sit there like, wow, you lived a life. Like, wow. So hearing their stories and their experiences with Karel Husa, with me not even knowing his music at the time, made me appreciate it way more and made me do my own research of like, well, seems like everyone knows who this person is. So I think I need to go do my own research. And it ended up becoming a great thing for me.
But like, can we, because you said something that was actually really brilliant. A lot of people who listen to this podcast may be really young students and you may have never gone to any conference ever, or you may be really intimidated because you've heard, oh, if you go to a conference, you have to know who to talk to, you have to know this, da da da. Here's the whole thing. If that's your thing, if you want to go in and feel like you know everything already and you already have your hit list of people you want to talk to, that's an angle, right? But I think personally, the best thing to do, first of all, if you're comfortable finding people to go with, go with. It always makes the experience a little bit more enjoyable, but also have this idea that you are going to learn. You are going there to learn, to gather information, to be around like-minded people. So don't feel like you have to know everything before walking into a room. Like Anthony said, find a room, find a word or something or a name that interests you and go, I want to know a little bit more about Karel Husa. I want to know a little bit more about Tom Hooten. Like, I want to know what this person is, why they seem like a huge draw, and just lean into it. Take notes, take pictures if you can't remember, like where you know what I mean? You never know how it's going to help later on in your life and your career.
Yeah. And also, you'll never know when you might be on that stage because that first year, I also spent all of my time, or the next year after, I
was about to say,
in the Reynolds Conducting Institute. Like these two will tell you that all 4 days of Midwest, for the time that Reynolds was going on, I was in the room. I was watching, I was listening, I was taking notes. Like I knew all the people that was in there. I knew, like, I'm like, okay, this is what they're saying, this and that. So cut to like 5 years later, I am now the one conducting at Reynolds. So it's like, you never know what will happen. And I just remember being in that room, just so glittered-eyed. I'm like, oh my gosh, like these people are conducting. And like that year, Michigan State, they were the players. And Kevin Settertall was one of the clinicians and everything. Like it was just OMG. So you really never know when you might be on the stage. And now look at us as Relative Pitch, being in everybody else's session, and now we're presenting our own session. Look how the manifestation works just by going in,
And that's the thing, you just got to go. Like, first of all, you just got to go because it's great professional development. And I think it's also personal development when you go and push yourself to be outside your boundaries. I remember that my first ITG I went to, and I was like, I'm a little baby. I'm just a little baby. It's like, I know nobody. And then like over the years, you just friend people on Instagram, just like on stories, blah, blah, blah. And now I'm like, oh my God, I have like coffee dates and like, we're going to go get lunches these days. It just happens slowly. Don't force it.
Don't force it.
Don't force it, especially when you're something that like, and that's like another thing like at Midwest and other things. Like if you try to force it, everybody's gonna know.
Mm-hmm.
Just walk in, be yourself, find your group. You will find it's just like high school. It's like high school. You're gonna find your group, you're gonna find the people you vibe with, and then you're gonna see each other every year.
Yep.
It's gonna be fun.
Literally, just be who you are. Because another thing about what is beautiful about conferences now, before I say what I'm about to say, are there some still bad things about conferences? Yes.
We've talked about it.
We've talked about it. Please go back. Literally, I think every season we have an episode about the cons of a conference. But what we're also saying is like, you still will find your group. You still will find something valuable. Also, don't be that person who's like, oh, I'm just coming here just for the hang, which again, the hang is very important, but you're also here to learn something. Now, I will say the hang is very important because sometimes you do ended up learning more from just hanging out. That is correct. But you don't want to spend all your money, because let me just tell you, registration fees for these conferences,
you better enjoy it as a student.
right? Like you at least go see something that you never even thought about or heard about. Or even if you were like, okay, I do know a little bit about this session. Guess what? It's another perspective on it. So go listen to that. Like what we're presenting about community building. There have been community building sessions before, but there's never been like our session. Our session one brings in a lot of diverse perspectives, not just us three, but Dr. Jones, Dr. Edie, Dr. Bushman, Professor Crawford. These are 4 different people that have a complete different perspectives on this topic that has never been heard before, especially like with Ashley Crawford. Yes. She's a flute instructor. She's a flute professor at a collegiate institution. I'm sure in the Midwest history, there really hasn't been a lot of inclusion of just solo instrument professors on a panel like that. That is not already presenting on the instrument itself. So this is completely different. So yes, has community building been a topic before? Yeah, and I'm sure it will be in the future after us. But we bring something completely unique.
Oh, yeah.
Let's just talk about it. Our panel is very diverse. Like,
oh yeah. Here's the thing about it. We put our money where our mouth is. Like we could not sit here and talk diversity, accessibility, representation, innovation if you did not see that within all the work, first of all, we do as individuals, but what you see us do even outside of this podcast, like whenever we are out presenting, because we could just sit here and talk, and we do, but I love the thing that we all love about this is that we want to take it places. We want to say, this is what we do, let's expand it. That's why I love the fact that we have on guests. We want to hear other people's perspective. We like to share those perspectives with others, because you're right. You can go to a conference and kind of know all the different topics that are going to be talked about every single year. How they're presented and who they're presented by is where you get the variation. Yep. Michael, is that what you were going to say?
I was about to say, y'all, there's always going to at least be 3 about intonation. There's always going to be 2 about balancing. Always going to be about 3 about how to break down a score in a speedy process for us educators. I'm like, y'all, can we just come up with different names? It says say intonation, say pitch. Ooh. I don't know. Just something different. Or stop presenting by intonation. If we haven't gotten it by now, we ain't going to get it.
But honestly, I'm going to be devil's advocate for a little.
Be a devil's advocate.
Again, it's a different perspective on intonations.
That's true.
And I feel like even at conferences, like sometimes you have to have a couple of topics that are like a recurring topic, because again, sometimes it's your first time.
It's the first time.
And maybe I'm like maybe I've been teaching in a small rural area that needs to know things about small band intonation. How do I do that? And there's usually a session about small bands and intonation, like every year. But yes, probably for me, I've heard that probably 7 times now. But for a new person that's like, let me try Midwest for the first time, they're going to get something truly valuable from that.
Oh yeah. And what I truly do like, there, like, I think this is a Midwest like staple, is these like little 15-30 minute classes on the instruments.
Yeah.
That is one thing I do like, because every year you can go and like go to a couple. Like one year, that's going to be your woodwind year and really soaking that up. The next year, that's going to be your brass year. And really soak that, because like starting an instrument is hard. But you know, there's some like, but I don't know why it's the intonation one that always kills me. I'm like, y'all,
but
way to think about sound, maybe
different way of sound. But two things. The first thing I would just have to say is like the concerts that you're going to hear,
go to all of them.
Going to be some of your top concerts you've ever heard. Like I would never forget the U.S. Air Force Band a couple years ago.
That was a show. That wasn't a concert.
It was a show. It was a performance.
Show. He came and shook our hands while his band was playing.
Yes.
Ooh, he said, God bless you. God bless you.
He said they got it. I'm gonna come up there in a minute.
And then gave one of the best performances of four Scottish dances that I've heard. A concert that I miss that I'm honestly hitting myself every single day, but the Baylor University concert last year.
I heard that one was good.
Everyone was like, that's crazy. But another thing about Midwest, their promotion of new material. So there's always going to be ensembles that will play new music. Like last year was Viet Quang's, who is a former guest that's been on this podcast, his piece Vital Signs with Eighth Blackbird, that is like taking the world by storm right now. Just like won an award recently. Like that was premiered by the US Navy Band with them. So it's just like you're going to hear great music at a high level.
Also, every band at that, especially high school and the middle schools, have to play a certain extent of it. They have to play every grade level. Like you could be a beginning band person and you go hear this high school play a grade 1 or this community ensemble
or college. Yes.
Well, like they will play grade 1 through 6, but the middle school, I think they play like what, 1 through 4, 1 through 5.
I think 1 through 4. You know, you can't really push middle school, but some have it. Like I one do Shepherd's Hay by Granger.
Which school did that the new oh my gosh, it was it Carabina or Carabina?
Oh, that was Vandergrift.
Vandergrift, Omar Thomas.
Oh my gosh, so fun.
Let's talk about like that kind of interaction, because so that school, Vandergrift, actually the performance that got them to Midwest, they did Come Sunday. Which if you don't know Come Sunday by Omar Thomas, listen to it. It's a key. We love it. But because that relationship was already there, Omar was like, well, here's the piece for you to actually premiere at Midwest. So it was like this beautiful kind of like family ties that happened when that came. And the other thing that I want to say was, have you some friends to go with? Because I was just telling one of my colleagues last week, I was like, you know, the beautiful thing about when we go to Midwest, we three know how to work together as a unit. In the best way possible, but also the shadiest and pettiest way possible too. Like we just know, like I'm like, okay, this person's walking to us. All right, y'all, let's go ahead. Let's keep the conversation short. Let's, move it on. And the thing is, like, it doesn't even have to be said. It's just like, got it.
It's a shared brain we get when we go to conferences. Yes. I really appreciate it.
And it's a beautiful thing that has happened. Like, is that the Relative Pitch crew?
It
is. And we eating lunch.
Right.
Lunch right now.
It's so fun to be identified together, though. I know that some people can get really weird, and there have been many instances, especially with pop culture, with like bands and groups, where they're like, I want to be seen as individual. But here's the thing, we still are. we still, especially like in our where we run in our own circles, are known as us ourselves as individuals. But it's so nice when we go into a space like that where we would be no, well, Anthony, that's kind of the space you really exist in. So it makes sense that, especially for you, you're doing Reynolds and everything, but also the fact that we are seen as a collective, in my opinion, is actually a huge compliment to how we work
Yes,
together.
I agree. I agree because, you know, especially like as you said, popular culture, they're like, I want to be an individual. And it's like, well, I hate to say this because this sounds mean, but if you're doing your own thing, then if somebody say that you're part of a group, will just roll right off the tongue. Like it will be completely fine. Like we do so much separate, but when we come together, all of our accomplishments that we have accomplished through ourselves just amplify what relative pitch stands for, what it means for. Like, come on now. You know, to me, it's a big compliment. Thank you. We are relative pitch. That's who we
Is RP. But also another reason I think you should go with friends. We've talked about this, especially Anthony and Lauren has talked about this. It's so easy to idolize people in this industry. Like if you're a first year teacher, you go to see this Midwest middle school band, and you're a middle school teacher, and you're gonna be like, I suck at my job. Or you go see these or see any of these presentations, any of them, and be like, oh, that is the only way to do it. Having a group of friends causes discourse and causes dialogue. So like you can have a couple of people go to different sessions, maybe on the same topic, as we were saying, intonation. Everybody going to be breaking down a score somehow, and you cause discourse because you're going to talk at the end of the night. And if you don't, you should talk at the end of the night.
Always.
But like it causes further conversation, and then it also breaks down idolization. Unless you have an echo chamber with you, then you should fix that before you come. Amen. Your friend should not be an echo chamber. Amen. Your friend should challenge you in every aspect of your life.
But you know, you're so right that it's so easy, because this is one of the first things I was told when I went to my first National Flute Association conference by a good friend of mine, is they were like, you might be all doe-eyed and, you know, oh my gosh, but you will realize, first of all, these people are people just like you. And some of them are not to be idolized in any way. You may meet them and go, oh my gosh, I don't want to be anything like this person, because it happens, and it really sucks the first time it happens when you meet someone who you think is doing exactly what you want to do. They remind you of yourself, all these things. You get to meet them, and it's a bummer because maybe they just suck as a human being. Maybe all the things that they've talked about that they do, they don't actually really mean those. Those are not their actual values. So having people there to also, whenever you hear that middle school who is killing it and they're so disciplined, and you think back to yours and you go, my students don't even want to be there. I don't even have a tuba. All these things, you have to have people who remind you that this is one situation. This is one perspective, right? But we all know there is layers and layers, and it's a spectrum of actually what the field is, and we cannot just base ourselves off of that. Now, they can be standards that we may want to look towards and have, but you're not going to have that everywhere, and that's okay. I would say I think that is okay that not every single band is playing that high caliber of music, right?
Yeah. I was just saying, yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say, to piggyback on that, is if you do find somebody who you're like, oh my gosh, like I really like what they're doing, say, hey, can I talk to you real quick? Because the thing with Midwest, everybody's just walking around and everybody's just a human. Like, hey, John, what's up, Eric? You know, like, can I talk to you real quick? And pull them aside and just like, can you tell me, what is your structure for running your program? Like, what are some of the things that make your program you? Because I have this situation and I just want to make it better. And like, for me speaking, this is like my firsthand experience of when I was teaching. I remember before Midwest, I was really kind of down. I was just like, after marching band season, after Christmas, like, you're just kind of like, oh my gosh, like, is it summertime yet? But then I went to Midwest and I heard all the like educators be excited about teaching and all of these different little tactics. I'm like, I can take this back and maybe this and this and this. And then when I actually got back to my program back in January, I was way happier. Like I'm just like, I feel like I have been rebranded in a way. Like here is the best way that I can be as a teacher. So you get little pickets of knowledge and you go back and you take that. Now, with all knowledge, you have to kind of be like a filter. You got to filter out the things that you don't need, but then take the things that you do need. Because again, I didn't have 500 students in my program. But there were some things that people do in 500-person programs can literally be applied to mines with 50. So you have to be the determining factor of what you're going to take, always.
Yes. Also, I love their recent push for chamber music. Just gonna plug that in there. Amani Wins performed last year. The Gateway Brass Collective is not performing in front of the exhibit hall. They're doing a whole concert this year. Like, love that. Go check that out.
Yeah. And honestly, like again, as we have said, there are things that still need to be worked on at every single conference. Like I literally just saw something on Facebook. Somebody just called out the Maryland Music Educator Association for their lack of, I guess, difficulty in their all-state auditions. Like I think they were still using very, very, I guess, intermediate level kind of music. Yeah, like very simple. And it's just like, what are we doing? Is this really educational for our students? So yes, every single thing, every conference has their ups and downs. But I think if you go to find some good things, I think you can definitely do that because they're definitely there.
Last piece of advice. Don't feel like you have to go the whole day.
God.
You do not have to go to everything.
Amen.
Now, Mark, like, what'd you say, Lauren?
We'd recommend not to, actually.
Yeah, recommend not to. Like, look at the calendar, mark anything you find interesting. Then as you get closer, mark what would actually make a difference in your education or your teaching situation. And then you have the stuff that's recommended. If you're like, I could go do one more session today, you have those still on your list, but you have your must hits.
Yep.
And then you have your recommended. Same thing with all the concerts. Do not sit in every single concert because then your brain gonna be mush.
Yep.
And then when someone try to carry a conversation with you, you're gonna be like, I'm sorry, I cannot talk to you right now.
And yes, because conference fatigue is a thing. It is major because having gone to now like 4 this summer with like all over the country, it is tiring sometimes networking with people and having to have on the sense of like, oh, I'm open for conversation. Yeah, let's go out for drinks. Yes, it's great, right? There are moments that you'll remember going out that you're like, I'm so glad I went out. I'm so glad I went out with my friends. And that's another reason why we advocate go with your friends. Go with people who know you, because there are moments where Anthony and Michael want to go out and I'm like, my battery is here. And I know myself well enough where I'm like, this would not be a good time for me or anyone if I go. And they have learned that if Lauren needs to recharge and be at home and like chill at the hotel room, that it's okay. I don't have FOMO. I'm not missing. And if I wanted to, I will just go out and find where they are. Right. But you have to have people who just know you to know what your tells are so that you're comfortable, because it can be an awful experience if you do not listen to yourself. So you can't do everything. You have to pace everyone, no matter like what level battery you are. You need recharge, period.
Agreed. So I do want to just change the topic a little bit. And this goes for really anything. This is a life thing. But what are our opinions on the one word is just tenure? That's one word. But being in a position for a long time and really nothing can really happen to you, you're just in this position.
Well, I think this is First of all, this is a topic that continues to come up not only here but socially everywhere. On Twitter, there's discourse on it. On Facebook, there's always some news event that happens. It feels like every other week about a professor at some prestigious university who has tenure, who there is a sexual assault case against them. Something has happened. You will never ever hear me defending anyone who does anything in harm of another person, their student, especially their students, their colleagues, their faculty members. There's no level of artistic excellence that can say, oh yeah, it doesn't matter that they did this because they're so good at conducting Wagner. Who cares?
Correct.
Truly.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, for me, anytime these cases come up, a lot of this is residue, though, right? A lot of, especially what we're seeing now, because it's a lot of older, I will have to say, professors who are tenured who are getting into a lot of trouble. And it's because they've had these practices for forever and they've gotten away with it. Because back in the day, you didn't speak about it. And if you did speak about it, nothing would happen, or you'd be like blacklisted from everything. You would not get called into because they're like, oh, they're the ones who snitched on so and so and da da da. These days, what I do love is that you can go on social media and post something and it'll blow up to the point where the organizations have to make a statement or have to do something in response to it. Now, there are still situations where those people are still getting hired, rehired, and they stay in those positions. And I think that is a reason why we're seeing tenured positions go away, because they realize that there's too much power in saying we cannot fire this individual. You know, I think tenure in some ways, because we can talk about the historical thing of if the people who have been excluded for a very long time, they have, once they get tenure, it's great because they can't be fired just because of, you know, they're a person of color or they're queer or they're a woman, whatever. They are protected because of this tenure. But as soon as you see the good, there's always the other side, which is the bad, which the bad in this case are people who get those tenured positions who want to do really bad things. And then what can you do? You can't fire them. Or if you do, it's this whole nasty legal that no one wants to do. So where do we go? What's the solution to this? I think the solution that they're finding is that they're just gonna get rid of tenure. They're gonna phase it out to the point where they're like, there's not really tenure anymore. But I don't know. That's what it looks like the trend is going towards now. Because people don't want full professorships anymore. There's adjunct now and associate, and people don't want to actually give more to individuals. So at least that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I don't know. So like, because this was a thing that we talked about, like we talked about this a lot in my master's, is like tenure. And the reason for tenure, the reason for sabbaticals is to give professors like academic freedom to not, if they wanted to change some stuff up that semester or that year, to get fired because it was just different and it didn't produce the same amount of results. Because like technically with adjunct positions at most places, you get hired and fired every year. That just happens. Your contract is not renewed past, like for me, it's every semester I get a new contract. For other people, it could be a whole year. So like living that life, if you are older, sounds awful. So like tenure for me, I still like the idea, because like getting to that professorship, even at the assistant level, you finally made it. Great. You have tenure opportunities in 5 years. That comes with a promotion as well. And it gives you, like, once you hit there, you have the option to, like, you know, do sabbaticals and do this stuff. But I do feel like we've been less strict on watching people who break ethics and break like the moral codes of universities and giving them a chance to get out of stuff. Like there's ways to get tenure, get people fired, and it's written in their tenure is ethical, financial, like all this other stuff. I think we just don't read the things and make it happen. I think we're like, oh, they have tenure, whatever. Like the university is like, I don't care if they violate anything. No, you should care if they violate something. And if they do, they are fired. Period. Done. Over. Oh, well, you had tenure, you lost your opportunity. Like, and what we're seeing is we're seeing a lot of people with tenure should be losing this opportunity, but now it makes a bad name for something that started with a good reason. Like, because we change as people. Like, I'm teaching this year a little bit different than I teach last year. I'm gonna teach different next year than I teach this year. But having that little thing of like, I have academic freedom, I can change some stuff. Like, also, what if I go under a hardship and a family member dies? My performance is going to drop a little bit. But I have that tenure to be like, okay, I'm so sorry. We can figure out a way, call in some subs and stuff, but you're not going to get fired because your performance level dropped for like a part of semester because of hardships. It's like those good things.
It shouldn't be that. It shouldn't be that anyway. Like it doesn't matter if you have an adjunct professor or associate professor, tenure professor, whatever. If you're going through something, it should be under an understanding. Like people should not have to rely on tenure to feel like they can grieve properly if they're in a state where they need to grieve, or if they have a medical emergency that takes them away. It shouldn't be this whole thing where, oh, I need tenure because I broke my leg and I can't, do this for a few, you know what I mean? So it's another weird thing that I actually want to push back against, because we shouldn't have to rely on this one thing that such a small portion of professional educators ever actually achieve. And it's just human decency. It's just something that we all deserve as human beings. So I don't know.
I think that my issue so far, from what I have seen, and yes, I'm in this academia world, but it's too much. It's too much. What I have seen that is not. Maybe it is in the bylaws or whatever, but it's not evident. It's checks and balances. Like, I think everything needs a checks and balances. Who is making sure that these tenured people are actually doing what they need to do? Because ethical, that's fine. But what if they are just holding a spot? Like, they're not making the university better. They're not making their students better. They're just here because they have this tenure. So I'm not going to get fired. So I can just give the bare minimum. So one of the things that I think about as a young 20 person that is in this career, who I'm thinking about my career in the future, of that, yes, I will not get any of these, what they call, quote unquote, the good jobs, because there are people that's been in there for 25 years who are just kind of gliding right now because they just know they can't be removed. Not even doing the best job, and not even about myself. I know there are some positions out there right now where I'm a young person would come in here, light some fire up on a lot of people's asses and start to get the ball moving, taking these ensembles, taking these just groups to a new level, because it's a new, unique perspective. But these groups will never get to that because the people that are still in charge have been in there since 1986. And nothing is wrong with that. I'm not being ageist. Nothing is wrong with that. However, what I do have a problem with is that they still are continuing traditions like it's 1986. It is 2023. So as a person, if I'm ever granted the uniqueness of having tenure and I'm in a position for 25 years, I'm not going to run the program like it's still 2023 when it's 2050. You have to, as a person, continue to grow as well. You have to grow with the times. And I remember my parents used to tell me that all the time. They're like, yeah, we old, but we grow with the times. We know that it is not when we were growing up. What we had to deal with growing up is not what you have to deal with. So we have to continue to meld with that. That is my problem with people that are in these long-term positions of are they really doing what's best for the students? Because sometimes, now some of them, yes, they are doing exactly what they need to. By all means, I love that for you. But there are some that I'm like, you don't deserve to be here.
And that's the thing that I want to state is like, it's one. So I think sometimes people get too often process and like the outcome very mixed up when we're talking about like tradition and what we actually mean by tradition. Work ethic should be present no matter what. So how you're going about getting results from your students, whatever, if you're an instrumentalist, if you are like you're working, conductor, the process of we want to work hard to get where we're going should be present regardless, right? The issue is when the repertoire you're playing could have been something that people had done 50 years before that. That is an issue. That's a huge issue. And it's also because tenure allows people to get lazy. And it's true because people have started relying, oh, I got tenure, I can chill now. Which is another reason as to why I'm not a fan of it. Like, I want, as who I am and how I see myself and my career going, I always want to feel that fire. I always want to feel that there is a next step that I could be taking somewhere. I want to feel pushed. Security and job, great, excellent. That should be there more often than it is. And it sucks that the system is that way. But tenure itself has become such heavier to me on the con side because it's mainly the con side that we're seeing about it. There are the pros, and we talked about that, but we just need better systems. And it is often professors who've been there for 20 plus years who are doing the exact same thing with this idea of don't fix what ain't broke. But what are you really adding to the university? What are you adding? What are your students taking away that they're going to be competitive? Because if my students are out there doing all these crazy things and they're so innovative and thinking, your students are doing the same, dust flying everywhere because that's all you keep teaching them, they're not as competitive. So if you're not teaching that way, you're just not adding. You literally taking up space. And it's not an ageist thing because there are people who are our age who are still doing the same things because maybe their teacher taught them, the teacher before them taught them. And that is a thing, right? That's a beautiful lineage, I guess, in some ways of what it is. But we always should feel challenged no matter what positions we are. And there are some who do feel challenged in those tenure positions still, but there's a lot who get those positions and they feel like this is telling me that I shouldn't change anything that I'm doing. They'd be happy if I stayed exactly the same for the next 25 plus years.
Correct. I mean, like, me personally, don't want to see tenure leave because I would like job security. I don't want to like keep signing a contract every 3 years or 5 years. Like, once I get my job, I want to have my job. I think there should be a system shift, like performance evaluations. Maybe not like if you're not tenured, maybe every year. And then when you get tenured, every 3 years, like just something like that. Or the people who are judging these tenure things, like people who are checking in on tenure faculty, who are like doing all this stuff. Like I personally like when people go for tenure, there's an outside review committee and an inside review committee. I like both because the outside goes to people who hold your position at different universities who've been tenured to judge and see if you are doing your job correctly. Like those, I love it. Yes. And then like an inside is one, well, because you need to make sure they're doing the right on the inside. Because I've seen so many people, as we all said, get tenure. Like there's people holding these university jobs, tenure, that literally do nothing. If you become a director of the School of Music, you automatically get a tenured faculty position, like with your job. So the minute you're fired from being director, you have a tenured spot and they cannot fire you from that. I've seen people hold on to that, collect their director of the School of Music salaries and just stay there. Because guess what? They tried to be director and it sucked. Like that, I'm sorry, you can come in and be director of School of Music. I'm not going to give you this tenured faculty spot though. Why would I do that? That's not your job. Your job is to be director of School of Music, not a tenured faculty member. Like there's a lot of stuff in higher academia that's a little weird. Like I found that very weird when I found that out. about director of school of music gets a tenure faculty spot the minute they get hired. I'm like, I don't like that.
But like, as we've been talking about this, I've been thinking like, why do we operate this way in general in academia? Because like, I work at the symphony and I sign a contract, and I know every year that I have a job until they have reason to fire me. And that's kind of how it is at all jobs, right? Most
Well,
besides
I was
academia.
literally about to bring up like this is a departure from like public education. Like, first of all, everything kind of stems from public ed. And technically, do you re-sign a contract every year? Yes. However, it is kind of like, unless, like you just said, Lauren, unless there is some big factors, which again would be like if my principal came in and did my teacher evaluation and I completely sucked, that's the reason for firing. Like, you're about to be fired, which I'm really questioning of why isn't that system more of a system in higher academia? Because it's like,
need tenure. You would not need tenure.
you really wouldn't at that point, because again, in public education, there's still people that have been there for 35 years, but guess what? They've been kept on their damn toes.
Exactly.
So they still have job security unless you're just not doing your job. And see, that's why I think that the tenure thing, you cannot just do your job and still be like, I'm still about to be here teaching and I'm still about to do nothing. So my question would be, since higher academia is just an extension of public schools, specifically secondary, because obviously elementary, middle, high school, college, why are we trying to invent this system that is so, I guess, opposite of basically everybody that you came up before in public school? And it's funny what you said, Lauren, about, oh, don't change what ain't broke. Guess what? In 20 years, I promise you did not have this many students that identified as the way they identified 20 years ago.
Exactly.
Correct.
So that proved that sentiment right there of shit does change.
Yes.
Simple. It changes, and it is really ignorant and really unprofessional and uneducational for you to continue just to sit there and be like, well, I've been teaching like this for 25 years. I'm gonna continue to teach like this for the next 25 years. That don't work. It does not work. And especially with this newer generation and even our generation that is demanding that you respect who we are and respect exactly what we intend for ourselves. Now, a couple of years ago, it was kind of, you just come in, you learn what you learn, and then you move on. But nowadays, it's like, if I don't feel like you are giving me the necessary education for myself, then I don't need you. And that's simple.
Okay. Well, and that's another reason why, like, and I remember hearing these all the time, and I never did a single one in college. But like these course evaluations, like if people truthfully filled out their course evaluations, I wonder if some of this stuff would have changed.
Yeah, well, it depends on who's reading the course evaluation.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But like if you get 20 people in the studio saying, I am learning nothing every year, something has to change.
Something definitely changed there. But I mean, I'm a proponent for just like in public school, you have whoever your boss is to come into and observe your class.
Correct.
And let me see some lesson plans. Don't do lesson plans. But let me see that you prepared for this. Let me see how you did this. And then let's talk about all the things of that. Because I'm sitting here, like, I know professors who used to cuss at their students, used to make inappropriate jokes, who would really not have the best ensemble experience for their students, but they still send exactly where they at.
Or people who don't produce any results, like with their students. Like not a single one.
And of course, that's different depending on who you are, what are results for kids. That is whatever the school determines that to be. Now,
That's yeah.
because we're not just saying like, oh, they have to come be the next orchestral, trumpet player. That's
No,
between
but people should be living with jobs.
some students might not
Close.
like some things.
But no, like, I'm not talking about professional jobs. I mean, you could be freelance is a job. Like, are you making money doing your art? Like, that's it. Like, are you making money doing what you did with your degree?
We all got to
There's
eat.
some people who are graduating because they weren't prepared properly, going to Red Lobster. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's what I'm like. Those are the results. Like, if you're graduating going to be a freelancer, you're making money, great. That's a check. You graduating with your 4-year degree and you're not even doing anything in music. And it's not because you didn't like music in the end. That's what I'm saying. Also, I think a big thing is like recruiting. Like these old people who ain't got a lot. You conduct an ensemble for 2 days a week. Bitch, go recruit. Go recruit at least one day.
Well, I think on the topic of success is really somehow have some type of form that says, okay, how did we set this student up for success?
Yeah.
Because I think that's what we should be doing as educators, not really focusing on, I need to get my students to place here, is did I set my students up to be successful in whatever they do? Because I had this philosophy when I was teaching high school. I'm not expecting every person to go be a music education major. And honestly, teaching college, especially like as a director of bands, I'm not expecting all of my students to be go into conducting or go be a band director. Because the thing is, the life that we live now, they're not making the money that they need to be paid by being a band director, by being a professional musician, a freelancer, whatever. Because you know what? Some people would go through these 4 or 5 years in this degree and be like, I want to make 6 figures on my first day. This was a great experience, but guess what? They can say, I learned so much through my 4 or 5 years here that set me success to now work from home, get 6 figures, and still be successful. So to me, in my head, that's a successful student because you took the necessary things that you learned and you applied them. So to me, that it depends on your version of success and getting jobs. Because again, like I said, in 2023, we can all say, all 3 of us know that we need to be paid more than what we are getting paid currently right now.
1,000%. Oh my gosh. 1,000%.
So, and I think it is kind of belittling to us to always say, oh, this is what you need to strive for, because inflation is going up, gas prices going up, rent is going up, all of this going up. You know what's not going up? Our salaries.
Yeah.
So I would feel really bad if I continue to just say, well, you got to get this job. You got to plan this. You got to conduct this. I'm trying to feed myself. I'm trying to have my lights on. I'm trying to have air condition.
Right.
So I think that there right there is a little different, because that I think when we have these, like, you have to do this, it comes from a level of privilege of just saying, I can still, even though I might, go do this over here, but I've maybe got a husband over here who can still supply my life. And not somebody who's had to claw their way up, pay themselves through college, and probably have student loans on student loans. And then I got $100,000 of student loans, and now I'm getting paid $25,000 a year.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's crazy.
The math is not mathing in that.
No, and that's a whole nother topic of like the undervaluing of education. Like, well, first of all, we all value education in this country. Education is so important. Then when you look at the bank statements, education's not that important. Why is a assistant football coach who teaches weight training making more than the math teacher, than the band teacher, than the science teacher.
And that as assistant football director, whatever, is coming up here in sweatpants.
Girl, if that, flip-flops.
Slides.
Ain't no teaks. Ain't no annual performance evaluation.
Yes, like where is the annual review? Because I need to be on this review committee, because I remember when I was teaching, them football coaches, they used to, one, show up late, show up with some good McDonald's,
right?
Show up with a good Starbucks. Oh, because I don't teach first period. Well, bitch, you need to be in the building like every other teacher. Okay, I didn't have a first period, but I had to be in my room.
But you don't do athletics. That's another thing. Like, we cannot value one thing out of a whole school more than the other.
Amen.
Like, they have been. They're going to continue to do it. And what's crazy to me is they always justify it by, oh, the football team brings us pride, or it does this, or they do this, they do this. I want you to watch one movie without any music. I want you to go to a museum with no art. When you drive to work, don't put on a podcast, don't put on any music, don't go watch your Netflix shows, because guess what? Those are artists who put all the shit that you consume all day long, and you think that it's just not imagine if all of it, poof, you don't have music at your football games anymore. You don't have someone who's designing your team's costume or your team's like uniforms and everything. Because let's really talk about how deep art is within this society, and we don't recognize it enough. So you talking to your students and telling them that, no, the science team, we won't give you enough money for new beakers in your lab. We won't give the math team new like trig sets. We're not going to give the band students more instruments, but you supply everything and more to your athletic students because you think they're the ones who are bringing you pride.
All these Nike sponsorships, Adidas sponsorship in high school.
For teams that go 1-9.
Be serious.
Girl, like, you can give incentives. I love a good incentive. But like, give it for everybody. If the math team wins state, that math teacher gets a little incentive. If the band wins a competition, that band director gets an incentive. If the football team happens to not go 1-9 and win a state championship, oh, well, here's your incentive. Incentives should be across the board for everybody because there's activities and everything. Culture. But like, I'm sorry. But like, what if all national, they said, here's the cap for a high school football coach. Girl, they better start Ubering.
Well,
DoorDashing.
I mean, we're always going to have these topics because it's been like this forever. And until somebody really just raises some hell, it's going to unfortunately just be like this. But I think we really got to have conversations to really check all of these inequities in all of our education system, from elementary school all the way up into the collegiate higher academia realm. Like, we have to have some type of check and balances. But for now, that is our little topics. That's our opinions on these topics for today. It was cute. So thank you so much for tuning into our first episode back of season 4. Please check out our website and follow along because this season is going to be jam-packed. So we hope to see y'all next episode. Bye.